is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Saturday in August after the Ravens preseason finale, losing to the Packers 30-7 in their final tune-up before the regular season, which is just 12 days away. We saw a little bit from Josh Johnson to start this game, QB2. We saw a little bit more from Devin Leary. He struggled in relief of Josh Johnson. We're going to talk about what we saw from the quarterbacks, from the skill position players, from the offensive line. How do we feel about this group as they get ready for the regular season? And then on the defense, some guys battling for the very final spots on this roster, literally 52 and 53. We saw a good look at those guys, and we'll have our guesses as to who makes this team and who doesn't. Jonas, though, before we even get to your word of the day, today was all about Michael Pratt taunting the Ravens, laughing in their faces. The Tulane quarterback, the 7th round pick, making the Ravens front office look silly for not drafting the 4-year starter out of Tulane, putting on a show. 8 for 12 in this game, a touchdown. He did have an interception, but proving our point that the Ravens should have drafted this guy in the 7th round.
Paul, are you going to admit on camera that you didn't know where Tulane was?
I know where it is. I just didn't know that it was known as a party school. I know it was the location. I know it's Nolans.
Yeah. What was it? It was a popular destination for some of my classmates. I'm surprised it wasn't for you in Philly.
Look, Syracuse University was literally the #1 party school in the country when I went there as a sophomore. So was it because I went there
in spite of your best
the
efforts?
Ratings? Who's to say? All right. In all seriousness,
he did throw an interception. If we're going to talk about like having a sober mind in this atmosphere of partying.
Yeah, he looked good. We saw 2 quarterbacks that were drafted late in the 2024 draft, and we had planted our flag on Michael Pratt. Particularly, I did plant my flag on Michael Pratt before the draft, and the Ravens went with Devin Leary instead. And both those guys are sitting on the roster bubble anyway. But I think we can safely say that Devin Leary will almost definitely not make this team, and Michael Pratt at least has a chance to make the team for the Packers. But let's get to your word of the day, Jonas. What is your word of the day?
It's bubble. It's not March, baby, in the words of Dick Vitale, but it was a day for a lot of bubbles bursting. I think more than bubbles not bursting. I don't know what the antonym of a burst bubble is.
Stable bubble, yeah.
A very stable bubble. Shout out to our former president. I think obviously the big headline immediately coming out of today's game was the broken leg, or excuse me, broken foot. I believe it was. Which was it?
Yeah.
Either way, for Owen Wright, broken foot. Probably not going to be a season-ending injury. You see the timetable on these rehabs taking anywhere from like 6 weeks to 12 weeks. Hopefully, it's on the shorter end for the Ravens and for Owen Wright. But a guy who I think probably made the most of his opportunities today, running behind again another poor run blocking effort. He looked better than Deontay Hardy on kickoff returns. And to see him go down, even though I didn't really know what play it was that might have cost him that injury. Maybe it was that last kickoff that brought back like 34 yards. Just a bummer, Bethesda native, Maryland guy, easy to root for. But now I think because of just the mechanics of how this roster will come together, probably a guy that you're going to see released on Tuesday, because just talking from a most likely outcome, even if some teams were impressed by what he did in the preseason, and that would be the 2 of the 3 games because he did not do a whole lot against the Falcons, I think it would be quite the leap of faith for a GM at another team outside Baltimore who hasn't done the homework on Owen Wright to say, we want this guy, even though we have no clue when he's going to come back from that broken foot. So I think probably the most likely outcome there is the Ravens cutting him, keeping Rasheen Ali, who again did not play today as he's dealing with the stinger, concussion, whatever situation, and then probably and definitely looking to bring him back on that practice squad, and just hoping that he can rehab quickly. But by the time he comes back to health, maybe a situation where Keaton Mitchell is good to go from that ACL rehab. So I think we kind of overstate the importance of that third running back spot in the abstract, but it is notable that you don't feel great about basically any name there behind Derrick Henry, behind Justice Hill.
No, you don't. And you obviously have to expect that Derrick Henry is still going to get the lion's share of carries. So you hope that this is not a problem that you worry about. Similar to the conversation that we had with Gianna Hahn last week, where we were talking about QB2 and whether Josh Johnson was good enough to keep this team afloat. And she made the case, and it's a good one, that if you're losing Lamar Jackson for any significant amount of time this season, well, the season might kind of be doomed anyway. I don't think running back has obviously as big a large importance as quarterback, but you're relying on Derrick Henry to be healthy. Like he is going to be the guy that you run your offense through. When Lamar isn't running the offense, so that is similar to that vein. If Derrick Henry has to miss time, or if Derrick Henry is not carrying the ball, well, you're going to have a drop off. And if Henry unfortunately has to miss time, and you hope that he stays healthy, he's been very healthy throughout the course of his NFL career, then, your offense is just going to have a drop off no matter who you have back there.
Yeah. And thinking about what might happen at that running back 3 spot in terms of the roster mechanics, obviously the big change to how teams handle the 53 man rosters is, in the past, you would have to, if you place somebody on injured reserve on cut down day, that meant that they were done for the year. Now you could put up to 2 guys on injured reserve, designate them to return. That's 2 of your 8 designated returns for the season. And you don't have to worry about any kind of handshake agreements to get guys back on your team, pliable guys like a Brent Urban, who's obviously always going to have a place in Baltimore for as long as the Ravens need him, and he needs the Ravens. But Arthur Maulet, one guy who, because of that arthroscopic knee surgery, would be an obvious candidate if they don't think he's going to be available in September to, miss the first 4 weeks. That's what you have to miss when you're on the IR. Maybe it's Owen Wright. Maybe it's Rasheen Ali, depending on, how the Ravens feel, how he feels about all this. But, if it is Rasheen Ali, then maybe the Ravens, and you have Owen Wright sidelined, maybe you look for a guy on the scrap heap of training camps. There's not going to be anyone really high ceiling coming out of camp who's going to get cut, but we know just how many running backs there are. We know, the Ravens in this system don't need a whole lot of talent to be a productive runner as long as you've got Lamar Jackson next to you. So maybe it's a situation where, kind of against all odds, they bring in someone from outside Baltimore to fill that running back 3 spot just because of the uncertainty now with Owen Wright as well as Rasheen Ali.
And this problem should, in theory, be fixed by midseason when they get Keaton Mitchell back, because that if you have all 3 of those guys healthy, and Justice Hill, Derrick Henry, and Keaton Mitchell, that's a strong running back room, but you just don't know when you're going to get him back.
Yeah, and we also don't know straight up just how Keaton Mitchell is going to look when he comes back.
Sure.
I think that was a pretty serious knee injury he was dealing with, and sometimes you need to be, in the year after the year that you come back for you to really recapture that old form. I know the Ravens coaches feel pretty good about just the timeline that he's making on that rehab. I think he's ahead of schedule, but no guarantee that the Keaton Mitchell, who was averaging 7-8 yards a pop last year, is going to be that guy that we see in 2024.
All right, let's talk about the offense that we saw in this game, because it was pretty putrid. Like the 3 preseason games, all 3 were pretty ugly offensively. This was the ugliest, I think you could say. Josh Johnson started this game. He was inaccurate early, went 5 for 7 for 71 yards, had a touchdown. Not great ball placement at times. Last week he went 7 for 7. He was perfect. Or 11 for 11.
11 for 11.
Did he finish? 11 for 11. 7-11 is on the mind. I'm going to stop by. He was perfect last week. Not as perfect this week. Not much, we've said it before, is going to change our opinion of Josh Johnson. He is who he is. He's 38 years old. We got a better look, though, of Devin Leary, who came in midway through the second quarter and finally threw his first interception of the preseason. Guy who struggled with interceptions in college, and then said, you know what? Let's have another one in there, and added a second interception in this game. He was staring down receivers. He was, not looking ready to, in any way, to contribute to an NFL roster.
Nope. That's kind of been the knock on him all camp. Just, I think probably his best throw of the day was the deep shot down the right sideline to Dayton Wade, but Dayton Wade bobbled that. Probably wouldn't have been able to get in 2 feet. So, I mean, I'm not ready to leap, Paul, to the Ravens should consider just cutting bait and looking for another developmental guy on that practice squad, because again, guys with Devin Leary's arm strength are not exactly a dime a dozen. But I do think you have to be vigilant, and if there is someone out there who becomes available, I know Pratt for Green Bay, I think, is in a battle for that QB2 spot. I don't know if he would be uh, gettable if he's cut. I don't know if they're going to keep 3 quarterbacks, but you know, you just kind of worry and wonder about the developmental arc of Devin Leary, considering his age, considering just how many reps he got in college, and to see him kind of making these one-on-one mistakes is really disappointing. And it's hurting. It hurt other people in this preseason. The both those passes were to Kadir Ishmael, who ran a good route, but just had to be on the business end of those lowlights. And it's just a tough look for pretty much everyone involved with that pick. I mean, it was Eric DeCosta picking him. It was Team Martin for going to bat for him. It's been Todd Monken for not really being able to paper over some of those bad looks. And I mean, Emory Jones outplayed him this training camp, or outplayed him this preseason, I should say. And I think that's a pretty disappointing outcome, considering all of the relative amount of hype that Devin Leary had coming out of the draft.
I mean, he is a 6th-round pick, so I think, you have to temper your expectations for the guy, but he's just not the prototypical developmental quarterback. We said it when he was drafted. We had issues with the pick because of his age. Michael Pratt, who's out there for Green Bay, is 3 years younger than Devin Leary. So to put it in perspective of just how far along Devin Leary should be in his progression right now, this is the list of starting quarterbacks in the NFL that are younger than Devin Leary. Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud. That puts things in perspective. Yes, it's okay to draft a rookie who is going to be 25 when the season starts, but he shouldn't be making the kind of mistakes that he was making today, staring down receivers and throwing picks and being inaccurate. Those are mistakes that you would expect from a guy who's 21, 22, not closer to 25. So you really wonder how much juice there is left to squeeze on this guy. He finished the preseason 15 for 28 for 95 yards and 2 interceptions. He did have a running touchdown at one point, Jonas. We would be remiss if we didn't mention that in the preseason. But other than that, I just don't know what he brings to this team that that they need.
Do you know what he brings to this podcast that this podcast needs?
Content,
the opportunity
and we
have flagrant quarterback draft opinions next spring
to push our takes, baby. To push our narratives. Other than the quarterbacks, what did you see from the offensive line in front of those quarterbacks? Because this was our final look at the offensive line before we head into week 1. An offensive line in flux. They changed 3 starters. We end the preseason with a different group than we expected for certain. Daniel Faalele, we did not expect to be a starter at guard. He's looking like he's going to take that spot. You have Roger Rosengarten looking like he's in line for that right tackle spot. You didn't see any of Ronnie Stanley. You didn't see any of Tyler Linderbaum this preseason. But what did you make of the group that was out there today? Again, Jonas, we saw Nick Samak starting at center, which was a change from last week and the week before, when we saw Ben Cleveland in preseason week 1. And then last week we saw Patrick McCary. Today we saw Samak.
I mean, it pretty much says everything you need to know about the offensive line. That like the one guy with a pretty clear arrow pointed up was Samak, and he got carted off in the second quarter with a lower body injury. not really any update from John Harbaugh post game as of right now. We still don't know even what the nature of the injury is. Is it, the foot? I know he had the broken fibula, I think, at Michigan State last year. John Harbaugh said Monday that he was coming back from an ankle injury that had, kind of limited him early in camp. And once he overcame it, he was starting to make some nice strides. So, you're hopeful that it's not something potentially season ending. I imagine that we would have gotten that kind of indication from John Harbaugh if it was. But, you know, I guess you feel confident with Ben Cleveland being the backup center. That one errant snap to Josh Johnson aside, it's not like the Ravens activate all 9 or 10 of their offensive linemen anyway on any game day. So if he's the last guy on that depth chart, and he misses 5 or 6 weeks, it's not really a huge deal. But still, just what else can you say about this offensive line aside from the one bright spot was this back end of the 53-man roster type guy, and he leaves, and you're left to wonder just where the rest of this group is, just in terms of their chemistry, in terms of their ability. I don't think the Packers started a lot of first string guys up front, and they still were not able to do anything to establish the line of scrimmage the way that the Packers second string offensive line was able to against the Ravens mix of starters and reserves. Daniel Failele has the false start on the opening drive. There's a zone run on the first play of the second drive where he just kind of goes up to the second level, doesn't really give any help to Roger Rosengarten, doesn't really chip, and Rosengarten's guy just has a pretty straight path to the backfield and knocks the Ravens for a loss or for no gain. Rosengarten, I thought, had not another solid day, but still a little bit worrisome to see a third string defensive end, Brenton Cox Jr., knock him back with a pretty straightforward bull rush on the 3rd and long on that second drive. And then Josh Jones, who we haven't really spent any time talking about on this podcast, but I thought had a pretty solid first 2 games, and then just as a total brain fart on that simple play action play that ends up with Devin Leary, who he is entrusting to protect his blind side, just totally smacked on the side, loses the fumble. Packers scoop it up and score. Just not what you want to see, especially considering the possibility that what if Patrick McCarry is your right tackle in week 1 and Ronnie Stanley suffers an ankle injury, suffers a knee injury? Is Josh Jones really the best option that you have there, especially with Daniel Failele not having played on the left side at all this training camp and this preseason? So nothing really to feel too good about. We were talking before the show, the Ravens are like 3rd to last in the NFL right now and average yards before contact per carry. Just not really doing anything to suggest that this group is capable beyond a superhuman effort from Lamar and Derrick Henry of running the kind of stuff that they want to in the run game this season.
Yeah, I don't want to underestimate just how much a difference Ronnie Stanley and Tyler Linderbaum can make once you add them to that group. But of the other 3 guys that we project to be starters there, you just didn't feel overly encouraged in 3 preseason games. And you didn't feel like you're in a place where you feel ready to go into the regular season in Arrowhead, facing a stout Chiefs defense and defensive line. This is a group that they made a lot of bets on, and they took, I wouldn't say shortcuts, but they certainly, were expecting young guys to get better, late round picks to get better. They're expecting, Andrew Voorhees, a 7th round pick, to step up. They're expecting 4th round pick Daniel Failele to step up in some regard. Roger Rosengarten, not a 1st round pick, but a 2nd round rookie, to step up. So they were expecting and betting on all these young guys, and then they add guys like Josh Jones, and they think, well, maybe he can be John Simpson 2.0. Those guys don't always turn into John Simpson. Sometimes they end up being exactly what you paid for. So I don't want to overreact to preseason games. That's, one of the biggest follies you can make when you cover the NFL. But this group is going to be tested, and the decision-making process that led the Ravens to putting together this starting 5 is going to be tested early, and it's going to be tested often in the first 5 weeks of the season as they face some of the best teams in the NFL, facing the Chiefs, facing the Cowboys, the Bills, and the Bengals in the first 5 weeks.
In some of the loudest environments of the NFL, too. I mean, if Daniel Failele is having trouble getting on the same page as Josh Johnson in a relatively milquetoast, crowd noise environment there at Lambeau. Plenty of people in the stands, obviously, but didn't really hear the decibel value cranked up. And how's he going to do when it's 70,000 Chiefs fans who've had 8 hours of pre-gaming to to wet their whistle, are screaming the most vile shit you can imagine? You definitely do not feel good about pretty much any of those positions aside from center. John Harbaugh telling Giannahan after the game that he expects Linderbaum to be ready for week one. You hope that he is ready to practice come next week, considering just the short lead up into that Thursday night game. But yeah, we're in heavy hypothetical area with just the amount of things that have to go right for this Ravens run game to really be the kind of overwhelming force it's been in past years.
One more note on offense before we switch over to the defense. We saw the first preseason catch from rookie 4th-round pick Devontae Walker. 1 catch for 4 yards. This is final tally in 3 preseason games. He was coming back from a rib injury for the first 2 games, and that's why the Ravens were slow playing him. He got a lot more playing time today. But I think that it's safe to say we can cool expectations and for this 4th-round rookie. I mean, because you look at where he is now compared to where Ravens fans were hoping he would be when they drafted him in the 4th round. I think he's going to make the team, obviously. It just does not feel like he's ready to contribute in his rookie year. And frankly, the 2021 4th-round wide receiver, Tylan Wallace, looked a whole lot better than he did today. And, it's just kind of frustrating that the Ravens seem to keep so far. He hasn't even played his first regular season game, but so far they haven't really hit on one of these mid to late round wide receivers that they keep taking over and over again, like Tylan Wallace, like Devontae Walker, like James Prochet, who was like a 6th-round pick, like Devin Duvernay or Miles Boykin, all these guys that they keep taking these flyers on. You just hope that one of them would hit, and there's still a chance that Devontae Walker can, but 1 catch for 4 yards in 3 preseason games is not a good start.
Yeah, I mean, I think my hope for him was that he would have kind of an ornamental role in the Ravens' early season offense. Be the kind of very poor man's Will Fuller, just run deep routes, run go balls, run posts, run corners, do anything to kind of open up the middle of the field for Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, those guys. But 3 games, 23 routes run, 4 yards total is not anything to feel good about. I think Tylan Wallace, assuming he makes the team, is probably ahead of him on that depth chart, which definitely, he's more sure-handed. I think he's, more expected to contribute. But in terms of what the kind of fear that you could strike into opposing safeties, definitely a bit of a downgrade there. And just the overall idea of Paul, shout when you expect one of these draft picks after the first 2 to do anything in week 1. Nate Wiggins, obviously, we expect him to have a significant role, but he might be behind Jalen Armour-Davis in that cornerback rotation. No real clarity there. Roger Rosengarten, obviously, could be the starting right tackle. Still TBD on that. Pretty interesting that Patrick McCarry did not play at all today after at least getting, I think, 8 snaps against the Falcons. But Adisa Isaac, another soft tissue injury, this time on the other leg. Devontae Walker, TJ Tampa, Rasheen Ali, Devin Leary, Nick Samak, Sanusi Kane.
Not feeling great about that group. It's a lot of the day 3 guys, and hopefully we see Adisa Isaac, who was a day 2 guy, be healthy and productive at some point. These are also guys, though, that you, I think, would hope would pay off later in their careers. That's what we see with the Ravens, that they take a lot of these developmental guys. And I do want to be clear, because we talked about on our last podcast, the Ravens rookie class, what we saw from the first 2 preseason games from them and not being impressed. The Ravens still have an excellent track record in terms of drafting the best player available, developing these guys over time. It's how they're able to get these mid-round hits like Justin Madubuike to cash in later in their careers. Jalen Armour-Davis, who was taken with a 4th-round pick, he got very little of in his first, 2 NFL seasons, and he's expected to have a bigger role. So it's, I think, premature to write off this rookie class in any way. We just might not see those kind of early contributions from this group. Doesn't mean that, Adisa Isaac 3 years from now can't be, a productive player, or heck, Rasheen Ali could be the Ravens' second running back in a year's time. So it's we'll see. We'll see. I think it's way too early, but we certainly have not seen a lot of flashy plays from this group so far.
Nope. And maybe we don't need to, because this is a deep team, deep offense, deep defense. But, the injury bug can strike at any time. And what are you left with then?
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the defense. Another good showing from David Ojabo, a guy who we are encouraged by after this preseason. One of the bright spots on this defense. You need a lot of more sack production from the guys that you have in house. Obviously, you lose Jadeveon Clowney. Do you feel better about David Ojabo right now, Jonas, than you did 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, way better, way better, because he's actually beating up on tight ends the way he should. He's setting the edge the way that he actually couldn't at Michigan, which I think is a good sign for him. On the other hand, a little bit disappointed from Tavius Robinson. I know maybe he is best suited for a situational role where he's not playing as an every down linebacker, which it seemed like the Ravens kind of forced him into today just because of how thin they are. But, this is a guy who is probably going to be seen, I don't know, 10 to 25 snaps a game. And he's going up against second and third string Packers linemen, and just did not really kind of overwhelm with the speed to power rush combination that you kind of expected. I think he was okay as a run defender. I think the bigger issue for the Ravens there was just the interior there, and some of the linebackers not being where they should have. But yeah, I mean, I know obviously he was the hero at the end of that game last year, but he was kind of invisible on a lot of the dropbacks today for Green Bay, which was disappointing for me. At least Ajabo had the one nice pass rush and the QB hit. But if Adisa Isaac is not going to be ready for the start of the season, and if the Ravens have a pitch count on for David Ojabo, then there's going to be a lot of snaps that fall to Tavius Robinson, and you can't have him being a cipher out there.
Yeah. What do you think of Nate Wiggins back in this preseason rotation, getting another look at him after he was flashy in his first preseason game and then ended up coming out early in that game? We got another look at him today.
Flashy again today with a mouth guard. Were those Packers colors?
I got to look back at the tape on that one, to quote John Harbaugh.
Look back at the all 22. Yeah, I mean, it was good to see him out there. I was curious whether he was going to be, I guess, cleared to play in this one. I think he was obviously cleared to play in Thursday's joint practice. It didn't sound like he had that great of a joint practice. I think he got beat once or twice over the top by a second or third string Packers wide receiver, or wide receivers plural. But to see him sticky, to see him swaggerlicious, I think a nice boost of confidence going into this Chiefs game, where he's going to need to probably be on an island a couple times if the Ravens are going to be sending the blitz to kind of rattle Patrick Mahomes, or do whatever they need to kind of mess things up for that Chiefs attack. So again, I don't know if he's going to grade out as highly as he did in that first game when he was like the highest rated preseason cornerback in week 1 by PFF, but as he did in that game, pretty much left you with no complaints coming out of this one.
Yeah. What did you think of Pepe Williams as well, who allowed that touchdown on the fade route into the corner on a absolute dime of a throw, might I say, by Michael Pratt? Otherwise, not as great in tackling, not as great in coverage. Pepe Williams, a guy that I think you had hopes that he was going to take a step up. We saw a big step up, I think you could say, this training camp and this preseason from Jalen Armour-Davis. Pepe Williams looks like he's maybe on the outside looking in on the roster bubble.
Yeah, it was not a great game for Pepe, and I think probably this is as good a time as any to just discuss like what the Ravens do with the back end of their 53. Obviously this is all kind of a matter of spinning plates and stuff with the offense as well, but maybe like just one or two spots open for a number of guys in that secondary. You have Pepe, who I thought was on the right side of the bubble before today, not only as a cornerback, but as someone you could slot in as a safety in the same way that you can use Ardarius, who obviously didn't play today and is at this point a stone cold lock that he's going to make the roster. But Bo Braid had the one misplayed snap and coverage where he took the wrong angle against the running back in the flat, I think, in that first or second quarter, and gave up a 10 to 20 yard completion, but had a couple tackles. I think at one point he was leading the team in tackles, leading all players in tackles. Didn't see a whole lot from Sanusi Kane, but that just might be a matter of where he was kind of doing his business. Darryl Worley was in on a couple tackles. I think he's probably less likely to make the team, and he's also a vested veteran, so that means that even if the Ravens cut him, he's not going to be exposed to waivers. They could bring him back. They could put him on the 53. They could put him on the practice squad if they really want that roster security. Bump Cooper, probably not too much of a threat to make the 53 as a undrafted rookie. He's had some nice practices in camp. I think he was involved in a play or a breakup in the second half today, but again, didn't really do anything extraordinary. So maybe Pepe just wins out based on attrition there, but considering the touchdown he gave up, considering the missed tackle he had in the third quarter that allowed to a first down catch, considering some of the the soft edges he had as a run defender, I wouldn't be feeling super great going into Tuesday's 4 p.m. deadline, but maybe just that comfort in the system and the fact that he's better than a Bo Braid at this point is enough to potentially get him a spot on that 53.
Yeah, well, not a great final showing, and the fact that you don't have a fourth preseason game doesn't really help your cause. You have 12 days before the season opener. You have 2.5 days, I guess, until cut down day, and you've already made your case at this point. With cut down day being around the corner, Jonas, I'll put you on the spot. Is there one surprise cut that you think this team could make, or is it going to be all chalk?
I guess it depends on your tolerance for surprise. Like, I don't think it would be a surprise if Saleh gets cut. I don't think he's shown a whole lot. I think he had the holding call in the second or third quarter today. Yeah. I know there's a lot of love for Dayton Wade, but I think, making a case for the roster based on 2 preseason games is usually not enough to get you onto that 53. I can't really think of anyone. I think it's pretty well solidified. No one's really coming to mind. They're not going to cut Ben Cleveland despite some of the speculation early in camp, especially now with Nick Samac potentially being out for a little while. So I can't really think of anyone. Maybe like they feel really good about, I don't know, like Russell Gage over Tylan Wallace, but that there's no credible evidence that would be the case.
Yeah, the other thing that you have to consider is because all these teams are making cuts at the same time, that there could be trades on the final 2 days before cut down, because a guy who could get cut somewhere ends up more valuable to the Ravens than he might be for his original team. So maybe that could open a spot where the Ravens want to add somebody there. But right now we're looking at pretty much the group. It's just you get to the end of the preseason, and with each passing year, it seems like the preseason gets more and more boring with every year. And this was by far the most exciting of the 3 games. We saw the most scoring in this game, but you just see so much slog on offense. You see so many missed plays. You see bad quarterback play. You see fewer and fewer starters every year. And we know that the Ravens have been especially cautious with their starters, with Lamar Jackson, as they should be. They got a 30-year-old running back in Derrick Henry. You just don't want to risk anything. But we just didn't learn. We didn't learn as much about this Ravens team in the preseason as, maybe you would have liked to, because you only saw 3 games and you saw backups for almost all of it.
And we got just the 1 day of joint practice in Green Bay, and
yeah,
even that, talking to Gianna, it was kind of tough to understand who was doing what because of just where they positioned some of the reporters on the field. So I don't know what else to add besides, I guess, that next Thursday night can't get here soon enough. I really don't know what to make of that. I think the line is still like 3.5, obviously favoring the Chiefs, but would anything surprise you from coming out of that game?
The thing is, I really wish I had a better sense of what this team was going to look like. And we see it every day in training camp. I get that, but they're going up against each other. You don't really see them isolated, against a different unit. So it's hard to gauge who's doing well and who's not. And you just don't see them in a game like conditions, game like atmosphere. So we just don't know a whole lot about this group. It just would have been nice to see more from the starters, but you understand why, they're being especially cautious. It's just the state of things right now. And I know I've seen some kind of belly aching from national reporters about what's even the point of the preseason. It still has a purpose. You still want to get as much information as you can about these guys who are populating the bottom tiers of your roster. And you still want to, get a good look at some of these guys, but maybe you make changes. Maybe you knock out another preseason game. Maybe you make preseason games 3/4. I don't know what you do, but it's certainly not entertaining football. And for the sickos that sat through all 3 preseason games, good on you, because some of it was hard to watch at times.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was hard to watch for Ravens officials too. I mean, this is a franchise that built that incredible 25 game winning streak in the preseason. I forget exactly how long ago it was. I thought I would get it tattooed, but I
It's
didn't.
the thing is, now that it's over, we don't even remember the details of it. It's just faded away into our history.
The bit that I had in my mind, Paul, was like, if we got to a certain point, I was going to ask John Harbaugh, is there a number that this preseason winning streak can reach at which point it deserves commemoration? Like, if it got to 30
it would
games,
have to hit the century mark.
That's he wouldn't even be alive to see advance for that race.
None of us would.
They would be inviting his grandchildren to the 100 game preseason.
And even then, you would still get people saying, "What is the point of this? It's still a preseason streak. Literally means nothing."
Yeah, but just to circle back, this is a team that didn't really win all those preseason games on the strength of their starters. How often did Joe Flacco play? How often has Lamar Jackson played? It has been just playing good fundamental football, running the ball well, defending the run well. And, these past 2 years, it obviously didn't really matter last year in the regular season, but they just haven't had the kind of depth or maybe the kind of coaching in some respects to kind of lift this team to even a close competitive game in this one. I mean, this is a Packers team. You don't want to, you don't want to read anything into preseason results, but I believe the Packers got blown the heck out last week by the Broncos, right? And that they come around today and just smack the Ravens around, and the Ravens got a little bit of a juice in that run game late, but not really. They still were kind of getting blown off the ball late along the line of scrimmage. Didn't really have a whole lot of creativity in that offense. Obviously, if you want to kind of keep those cards hidden, I totally get that. But it felt non-competitive today, and they were lucky that Jake Elliott missed as many field goals as he did in that Week 1 game, because otherwise that would have been a far less exciting game at the end.
Yeah, and Gianna Han, who's in Green Bay, did note that John Harbaugh did say in his post-game press conference, like, we're already on to Cincinnati, as Bill Belichick would say, but they're already on to the Chiefs. I mean, that why would you game plan for a preseason game 3 with your quarterback 2 starting and entirely backups out there? You're not going to show anything. You're not going to give anything away. You're not going to play really any starters except for your starting linebacker Trenton Simpson, who had a nice interception today. So it's just it's utterly meaningless, like much of life, Jonas. Like much of life. At Jonas_Shaffer is his Twitter handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. How excited are you for some roster movement? Cut down day is on Tuesday, and you're going to have complete coverage on the BaltimoreBanner.com along with Gianna Han, where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months. We're actually going to get some news here, Jonas.
After eating that big old serving of nihilist Arby's that you gave me, Paul, I'm not really excited for anything. I'm just
this is just
for the slow embrace of death.
I'm really just ending on a high note here. We're 12 days away from Week 1, Jonas. The thing is, it's gonna go from 0 to 100 because we're seeing an AFC Championship game rematch in Kansas City. We're gonna see the debut of Derrick Henry. Like, that is in itself going to be exciting, even if the opponent was going to be bad, and the opponent's going to be great. It's the defending Super Bowl champs. It's going to be a great start to the season. It just cannot get here soon enough. That's all.
Should we record a mini pod during the Ravens Chiefs game where we spend like 15 minutes just talking about the aesthetics of Derrick Henry in the Ravens uniform on primetime next to Lamar Jackson?
The thing is,
just doing the whole Chris Farley SNL routine. Do you remember when Derrick Henry lined up behind Lamar Jackson at 6'3", 240 pounds? That was awesome.
That was awesome. I mean, he posted the picture, Derrick Henry did, on his own Instagram of himself trotting out to practice. And I know we see it in practice, but it still feels photoshopped because we've seen so little of Derrick Henry in a Ravens uniform so far. We just haven't seen it under the lights. I'm ready to see Lamar Jackson hand the ball off to Derrick Henry in a game that matters. That's what I'm ready for.
Do you think Derrick Henry is ready for this Ravens offensive line?
Yeah, we'll find out, and we'll find out if anybody's ready to tackle the guy either. Too. That's the thing. He's still gonna come downhill, regardless of who's in front of him. All right, Jonas. That just about does it for our show today. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff on the Banner Ravens podcast. Write us a good review, and I'll read it out here on the show if you give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We're gonna have another episode probably Wednesday of this week to react to the cut down on Tuesday, and we'll react to the group that we see for the final 53-man roster of the Ravens. And then we'll be live again the following week before week 1 to preview the game against the Chiefs. We've got season previews to do. You've got a lot of writing to do. Jonas, I'll let you get to it.
Yeah, Wednesday will be our season preview pod, right?
I think so. I think we'll give our predictions there, which we're never wrong about. I did predict last year that they would be in the AFC Championship game. So
how about that?
Yeah, look at that. All right. That just about does it for our show today.